Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today at Juanette's Crafting Corner for my Quick Tip Thursday. And this is episode number 70. Now, I had told you in the last quick tip that for my Thursdays, for a few of them, I'm going to be doing vlogs of my trip. I already did a part one, and so this is part two, but I didn't really show you on a map kind of everywhere I was going on the 3 week trip. So I started in Ebony, Eb, I tried to say Aberdeen and the same time saying Edinburgh. So I started in Edinburgh in Leith, Scotland, and then I went here to Aberdeen, Scrabster, Lyric, and then part two is starting here in the Faroe Islands, and then going through some of those, and then ending up in Norway. So it was from June the 17th to June the 29th. It was 12 nights. It was with Atlas. That was the cruise line. And so let's get started with the rest of the vlog. This village of about 14,000 people is the capital and the largest city of the Faroe Islands. Note these buildings here with all of the grass up on top of the roofs. Isn't that fascinating? The Norse or Scandinavian people established their parliament here on this peninsula in AD 850. Here I took a little walk to the end of the peninsula, and past that water is the ship. The fog was so thick this day that you're not able to see the ship in the background there. This is one of my favorite pictures here of the little village with all the boats in the harbor, and then just a picture walking around the village. And then after our excursion, the bus stopped up at the top, and I was able to take a panoramic view of the town. And then there's a small clip with zooming in of the ship, and then just a picture of me standing on a hillside there. The excursion I picked was to this little village near the northwest coast of the Faroe Island of Streymoy. Now, because the village is so beautiful, I'm just going to put on some music to have in the background while I show you these pictures. Our next stop was to this little village that only has 973 people living on it. And many people in the comments of my last video said that they liked me putting a map on the video so that they would have a reference point. Now, salmon fishing is a big industry here. As you can see, this salmon farm here. Now, to get to various islands here, sometimes we would take a tunnel that they had built between the islands, and so you were actually underwater. One of these was built in 2002. You didn't feel like you were underwater, but it was kind of eerie. The other interesting thing is, I told you how many people are on this little island, but there are over 2,200 sheep. Now you can see there was a lot of a mist and fog. When we were there, there was a light drizzle of rain, enough to where you needed an umbrella to walk around. But what stunning scenery. Coming up, I have inserted a map so that you can see a reference point of the Faroe Islands to Iceland, Norway, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. Now, this little village is an ancient settlement dating back from about 1350 AD. This little waterfall was magnificent, and once again you can see there was a light drizzle going on, but nothing to impede our ability to walk around and view the beauty around us. And then soon there is going to be a picture of a grass-covered house, the roof, and it was the most spectacular little house on this coastline. This is my favorite way to sleep on a ship, with the balcony door open so I can hear the waves all night long. Because it basically does not get dark here, I'm so glad I have an eye mask to sleep. The 24th of June was skipped because that was a sea day. Now, the Faroe Islands consist of 18 islands, several of which are deeply incised by fjords. And a fjord is a long, narrow sea inlet with steep sides or cliffs created by a glacier. And I think this just proves why it was a good choice for me to take a small ship cruise because a larger ship would not have been able to go into some of these areas. So now we've made it to Norway. It's a country located in Northern Europe, in the northern and western parts of the Scandinavian peninsula. There are 15 counties in Norway, and Stalham is a village in Vestland County in Norway, and that's where I'm at right now with these pictures. This was one of our starting points of our excursion. This viewpoint here, which is one of the most famous vantage points in Norway. And as I pan in, you can obviously see why that is so. Behind me was a hotel, and we had stopped here and had a little bit of a coffee break, and they gave us this beautiful, like Danish cheese pastry that the crust was just so awesome. After our little coffee break, we boarded a boat for a 2 hour cruise through these UNESCO listed waters. UNESCO stands for the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations. It was founded in 1945. This small village has a population of about 100 people and 500 goats. I couldn't help but admire the steep mountains rising over 4,500 feet in some places, countless waterfalls tumbling into the deep, dark waters, and picturesque farms clinging to the slopes of the mountains. This is one of those places that you visit that you just can't take a bad picture. And it makes you wonder if these people living here know what a beautiful place they live in. We stopped here. I did a little bit of shopping. It's where I bought one of my ornaments for my tree. And just continually at every little place, there were waterfalls coming down the mountains. And then they would come all the way into that fjord. Now, I showed you this here because this was my actual ship that I was on. And this is at the front, and you can see that it is a small area. It is not a big ship. They had plenty of deck chairs for people to sit out and watch the scenery, and you didn't feel crowded. Our next excursion in Norway was to this monastery built by English Benedictine monks in the early 11th century. The monastery was dedicated to Saint Sinava, the country's only female patron saint. As we walked through the halls of the Benedictine monks once treaded over 700 years ago, we walked up the steps to a cave. It was about 120 steps up. It took its toll on me for sure. But up here in the next picture is the cave, the entrance into the cave, and then a picture of me standing in front of the cave. And then here's a little video of, you can see the part of the monastery way back in the back. And in the other pictures, you could see it looking from up there to the bell tower. Up next is me being able to ring the bell in the bell tower. Next are just a couple of pictures of when we first landed and docked in Malloy. And then I think I mentioned in another video the difference between our ship and the big cruise ships. That's our little ship there on the left, and then the big cruise ship. And then in that little village, as we were walking around, there were a lot of murals painted on the side of buildings. This one was really unique. If you look closely toward the bottom there, you can see the difference in the water. Our next stop on Friday was this little village here. We stopped at this lighthouse. It was established in 1852 to guide fishing boats safely to the harbor of the small fishing community. The current lighthouse was built in 1876 and is in still operation. When our bus arrived, there was a downpour happening. But of course, that didn't stop me from climbing to the top of the lighthouse. And here's some of the views. It doesn't look like it's raining there, but believe me, it was still a downpour. It was lovely though. It was fun because, I had a good umbrella, but it was very windy also up there. Our next stop was this little village, and we got there by going through an underwater tunnel that stretched about 2.2 miles beneath the ocean. We visited this 12th century church that is made out of white marble. Now, there was an extremely knowledgeable young woman who gave us a tour of this chapel, and she probably was only about 25 years of age. The neat thing is, in the picture coming up, you're going to see a table, and there's a gold tablecloth down toward the bottom. That is from the 1800s. After our tour, the bus dropped us off here in Ålesund, and I pretty much walked around the village. I did some shopping. I look at that small skinny building there. That was amazing. Some of the architecture of what was on the buildings was fun to look at, the facades and what have you. I did come upon a shop that was selling and actually sewing the Norwegian traditional costume. They say that every region has its own unique design of this costume, and the Norwegian people wear this outfit on life's special occasions. They have brooches, detailed embroidery work, using wool fabric, and they stand out and represent the old Norwegian folk culture. They especially wear it on their national day, which is May the 17th. This was a fun little statue that was just in the middle of like the shopping square, which is that area right there. And then I found it interesting that in Norway I could find old El Paso Mexican food at the grocery store. I know people are always a little amazed when they ask me who I'm going with, and I say, I'm going by myself. Well, I never am by myself for very long. Here is the group of ladies that I ended up meeting on the cruise ship. You know, as time goes on, you'll see one lady off by herself and you go to visit with her, and then you say, oh, do you want to have dinner together? And yes, you end up eating together. And then they find somebody else and they go, oh, this lady was traveling by herself. Let's have her sit with us. And like I said, in that picture, by the end of the trip, there were 6 of us that had dinner together every single night. The lady closest to the picture on the right hand side is who I'm going to Paris with. Like I said, I did not know her before. I met her on the cruise. She mentioned she was going to Paris, asked me if I would like to go, and I jumped right on it. So I think I have a new friend and a new traveling partner now. Today, the 28th, was the last day of the cruise. My excursion was a visit to a Norwegian farm, and they served us lunch, And little did I know that we were going to have basically a full lunch, because I had actually eaten lunch before we left for the excursion. So I didn't eat very much, but they started out by serving us some infused water with, and I don't know the names of them, but specific herbs and flowers. And here's a picture of them. They were absolutely delicious to taste. And then we had some cured meats. The next thing I have written on the picture, but it is a Norwegian porridge made out of sour cream, whole milk, wheat flour, and butter. And it's usually drizzled in butter and then sprinkled with cinnamon and sugar over the top of it. And it was delicious. Then I tasted that brown cheese. I did not like it at all. And then they served us these Swedish or Norwegian pancakes, and they were delicious. And then I kind of just hung out around the farm. I swung in a swing that they had hanging there, and it was a really nice, relaxing afternoon. The wind was quite fierce, but it was a beautiful sunny day. A nice day to end the cruise.